puts it on the lift and goes, "We're starting from scratch." I'm like, oh my God. So in 2015, I did my first ever big project car, and that was a S13 240-6 that I actually bought here in Atlanta at Top Speed Motorsports, which is now Sissio. And it was underneath a blue tarp, and I got really excited about it, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into because I did not have the talent to do this all by myself, but I convinced myself that I'll just figure it out. It worked out, I'd say a couple years later, ended up making the car work. And I at least got to drive it before anything else bad happened. Well, in the meantime, in 2016, I really wanted to learn how to drift. All my friends were doing it, everybody on YouTube was learning how to do it, and it just looked really fun. So I had a few friends in town say, "David, there's an S13 Coupe, but it has a 1JZ already in it." I'm like, "Does it look good?" They go, "No, it looks awful." I'm like, "Okay, great." So I don't have to worry about if I hit a wall or hit anything. That way I can really push my limit without being paranoid about hurting a nice car. So I end up driving the hour and a half out of the way. The address is wrong. So I end up in podunk nowhere at some person's house who starts coming out on their porch. And it feels like I'm in a 1930s movie and a shotgun's about to be racked. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Back up, get to another address, end up being so over it, I don't even double check the car. I'm just like, we found it, here's the money, I wanna go home. And it's already like 2 in the morning. So I drove all the way back, opened the garage door, and as soon as I pulled it into the garage, there's some coolant on the floor. And I'm like, okay, it's a rough car, but it's probably not catastrophic. So the next day, I bring it to one of my friends, and we pop the hood, and he goes, "Dude, there's zip ties holding on the radiator, holding on the intercooler piping. There is a power wire going throughout the entire cabin to the battery that's been relocated at the trunk. So every time you wanted to turn the car on, you would just put it on there and the fans would turn on. So you couldn't have the power wire always connected because the fans were always on because it was using a factory ECU to make it work." So I'm like, it's fine, no big deal. Well, then I tried to register this car and realized there's a typo on the VIN number. So then I go, okay, what do I even do about this? So first off, I had to get the police involved. They came by to the shop at the time, looked at the VIN number and said, "Yep, that's wrong. Is this car stolen?" I'm like, "No, it's not stolen." They're like, "Oh, there it is." So what happened was somebody wrote an S instead of an 8. So from a sun glare or something, they just glanced at it and wrote it wrong. And then they typed it in wrong. So it was a Tennessee car. So then I shipped the title back to Tennessee, waited for a little while, and I was in no rush to get this done anytime soon, so I didn't sweat about it. The previous owner was incredibly cool about the situation, mailed me back the fresh title. I get it, I'm like, okay, great. So then I get back in the car and drive it for about an hour or so, just kind of seeing how things are. And the interior of this car was really mint. Overall, the seats were good, the carpet was good, dash was good. Cracks here and there, it's a Nissan 240SX. Well, then the motor blows up. So then I had finally gotten the title thing sorted out, but now the motor's out. So I'm just sitting there going, what a dumb idea this whole car was. So I put the car in front of the camera. I remember opening my tripod up and I'm just said, I'm gonna tell my entire audience to just forget about this car because I just don't have time or the means to fix this right now. So I basically do a video saying, I promise it'll be done soon, whatever soon means. And I was incredibly vague in the video, but you could tell I was frustrated in the video, but put it up there. It's a one take, basically me rambling just to be like, hey, everybody, don't worry about it. Well, then we ended up just using the car for some tutorial videos, like how to spray paint a car, because we just didn't care anymore. The car was just a shell, basically. So at the end of the day, it gets put off to the side. So we've just gone from September of 2016 to March of 2017. March of 2017, I call my friend Alan and I go, listen, I just added up the money to how much this would be to fix the 1J. In today's market, with JDM engines being more expensive, the horsepower per dollar doesn't seem like it's worth it. He's like, you should Coyote swap it. I go, why? He goes, well, that's what everyone associates with you, and it's reliable, and it's just cool. I'm like, okay. So I call some connections. I get a little bit of a discount on the engine, not much, but whatever helps, right? And I get the engine about 2 months later after saving up for it. Shows up and it's like Christmas morning. We open it up. It's my first ever crate engine experience. And it's just so cool to see a truck show up and a forklift giving you something you know is cool, right? So they open it up and there's a Mint Gen 2 Coyote engine. So it's a 2017. It's kind of revered as one of the better engines Ford ever made because it's very much influenced by the Road Runner engine out of the Boss 302, which had been proven to be really good with force induction and boost and stuff like that. So I knew I was getting a really good engine. So I'm very excited about all this. Only problem is with being full-time YouTube and traveling all the time, there's not a lot of planning that could be done. So I go, you know what? Let me just keep the motor safe. I got to get a transmission now because in order to put this big giant engine in a small Japanese car that, by the way, had never been done before in the S13 at the time. It had since been done now. But at the time, there's no kits. There's no research and development. There's no anything. There's no fabrication. There's no clutch combos. You have to do all this research. So I end up going, all right, I don't want to use the MT82 that's in the Mustang, so I'll go with a Tremec transmission. So I save up the money. Another 3 months go by, get the Tremec transmission. That shows up. Well, then we need to get a bell housing. Okay, they don't make a bell housing adapter for this. Okay, great. I'll have to get a full-blown NHRA QuickTime bell housing, which is massive, which also makes things hard. Finally, we put it all together. We had to do some trimming here and there with the motor and the trans. Try to put it in the car the first time. Instantaneous disappointment because since it's a rear sump oil pan, instantly hits the rack and hits the subframe. Okay, no problem. We'll change it to front sump. Order the Canton oil pan. Get that on there. Instantly drop it in again. Okay, there's no clearance. Except on the strut towers, which made us incredibly optimistic. Because as soon as you put the motor in, it clears the engine bay. So you're like, oh wow, we don't have to go to front end. In hindsight, I should have gone to front end. It made my life easier for maintenance. Well, I'm over here thinking delusionally, that's gonna be a street car. It's gonna be a street car. I'm driving on the street all the time. No. The point of the matter is, the further deep we went, the worse it got. Finally, trans tunnel comes out, cut out the trans tunnel, try and make the clearance. Well, in hindsight, way too much was cut. Finally, a few more months go by, or actually probably a year goes by, and I get the car to paint and body. And basically put it up on the lift the first time. We're like, not everything's great, but we'll figure this out. Get it painted, and we go through a whole bunch of different colors. We go, okay, would it be cool to have a custom color or just one that's really easy to fix but also looks good? So we thought, well, this thing might get banged up. So let's find a easy to blend color that's mass manufactured and easy to work on. And so we ended up with the RAV4's color. It's a blue Toyota RAV4 that was also on the Corolla. So that way it's easy to get. It's like more of a pastel color, so you can just throw it on and it'll blend really easily in case something were to happen because it's drifting. Well, then after that, I give the car to another shop because the power steering wasn't working for some reason. Well, then they split my brand new side skirt in half. So that's cool. So then I got that back. Had to get the fiberglass redone by a guy named Larry, who's an absolute genius with fiberglass. Gave me back that, got it repainted, put that back on. And then finally, it was like, okay, the car's moving under its own power. Let me go try and do my first donuts in it, at least. Go out there, terrible idea. Because end up finding out that the rack had not been spaced enough or needed to be relocated because my wheels were binding against the rack. So I couldn't get any self-steer to come back. So I do it, and also the sole of my shoe was melted onto the firewall because stuff was done improperly and there's not any insulation. So I get it back to the body shop, and then I give it to my friend Alan, who at the time had a shop named Excel Motorworks, puts it on the lift and goes, we're starting from scratch. I'm like, oh my God. The car was in such bad shape because there was fuel lines next to the headers. There was these Chinese hose clamps where the fuel lines were, and you could pull them off with your hand, like just by no force, just bop right off. That's safe. And then just a whole bunch of other stuff. And the biggest thing with this project was the steering and the exhaust. For the steering, we had to do a very wacky setup. We had to use a Woodward steering column, which is what you'd find in like a NASCAR or something like Ken Block's Unicorn. And then you'd have to use a steering shaft, a U-joint, a bushing, and then another steering shaft to get around the engine. And then for the headers, it was F-150 headers that worked out of anything. We had fabricators come in, we had all this come in, and it's like, dude, just use these. And they're 120 bucks. And if you look in the Ford Performance parts catalog at the time, it was the same part number as a Coyote hot rod swap header. So they were like, yeah, just use these cast manifolds, they'll work. Years go by, and we're just slowly chipping away at this car. Like, hey, let's get a little bit of progress done here, a little bit of progress here. We bring in a fabricator, and he says, you might need to restart again because the trans tunnel is in such bad shape. I don't know if I can save it. So shout out to David Campo, who came in and saved the chassis because so much metal had been cut. He goes, this is probably compromised. So he fixed it, created a whole new trans tunnel. Next thing you know, we're kind of sort of back in business. So now the car is a car now. Finally. Then after that, we realized that the subframes had to be replaced. All the bushings needed to be replaced. All the control arms needed to be replaced. The angle kit had to be modified because it wasn't working quite right and it was still binding no matter what we did. We had to put more heat insulation in. We put the FDF aluminum panels on the floorboards to keep my shoes from melting, stuff like that. But then, next thing you know, we get a digital dash for the car. Come to find out, my ECU is the only one in the world that doesn't work with that screen. So now we have to somehow retrofit that. We created our own entire wiring harness for the car. So shout out to Matt Hall, who did a custom wiring harness for the entire car. It was just getting crazier and crazier. And then finally we had to use a Boss 302 intake manifold because the throttle body on the factory one aimed up like an elephant trunk. So with a Coyote, you have to run mass airflow sensors. You can't just like delete it. So basically it would go out in this way and that's not gonna work. So we got the Boss manifold and the throttle body actually aims downwards. So that can create our intake. Fast forward a couple more years, Ford comes out with a new Cobra Jet manifold and I switch it to that. Same thing. Long story is now to the point where, okay, we're in the home stretch. Now we need to get the braking system done. Come to find out, the 240-6 pedals weren't gonna work. So then I got a new pedal set that was supposed to come with kind of power brake reservoirs to just kind of have everything built into one thing. The reservoirs don't come with the pedals. So then I go, this is supposed to come with this. So I call the company. They say it came with it. I go, no, it didn't. They go, on our file, it says it came with it. I'm like, I don't have it. So fast forward, I just end up buying it again because I'm just over it. Finally get that. Well, then the problem is now the factory gas pedal that you have to use with the Coyote, which is the drive-by-wire one, is too high. So now this is higher than my brakes and my clutch. So I can't really heel toe. I can't do all these fancy maneuvers with my foot because my right foot is all the way up here and my clutch foot is all the way down here. At this point of this video, we're still deciding what to do about that, but we're probably gonna cut the pedal and just make it shorter. The Tremec gearbox and the diff and all that kind of stuff, come to find out the first shop didn't put any fluids in it. So the diff ended up having to get rebuilt as well. At the end of the day, it was a rushed project at first that didn't have enough time and just basically people not understanding that I wanted it to be this way, but not this way. And what I've realized from this project is that, one, it's good to have kind of unrealistic goals sometimes. It has been a huge life lesson that it was kind of nice going at my own pace to build this car on one hand, but also is a downfall on another hand because you let a lot more things slide. So by the time I finally release all my videos and all my sponsors are happy, it'll be a really cool story to tell everybody, and I'll finally get to rip a Coyote swapped 240SX and bring it all over the country. And that is all I got to say about that.
We have extended our promotion with Celebrity Machines, so if you use the code VINwiki, you'll still get a discount on the replica license plates from your favorite star cars from your favorite movies and television shows. But if you go over to VINwiki.com, you're going to see a lot of license plates, like this replica of the plate from my Diablo from Japan, autographed Car Trek plates, and all of those came from Celebrity Machines as well. So if you're looking to have a promotional plate to pass out to fans, to use on some cars, or to do anything to promote your business, Celebrity Machines can handle that. Any state, any characters, any country even, they can make it happen. So check them out now at the link in the description below. Use the code VINwiki for a discount and thank them for their support of the channel.